Hello, welcome to my channel. So today we are going to introduce the skeletal system. So this before we start talking about the appendicular system, the skeleton, we have to go through the skeletal system where we talk about the development of bones, the growth of bones, and other things we might discuss. Okay. So first things first, we're going to start with the definition of common terms related to the skeletal system. Okay, so the skeletal system consists of bones and other structures that make up the joints of the skeleton. Then it also has different structures, different types of tissue, namely, we have the bone tissue, the cartilage, and the fibrous connective tissue. And these tissues form the ligaments that connect bone to bone. Okay. Then now the definition of terms. So the terms that we'll be using terms such as trochanter, tuberosity, and the tubercles. So these are rough bone projections which attach muscles and ligaments together. Then the different names differ to the size of projections. For instance, trochanter is the largest bone projections, whilst the tubercles are the smallest bony projections. So if we say trochanter, we are referring to the largest bone prominences. Then if it is also a bone prominence, but it is small, we call it a tubercle. Okay, then the styloid process. This is just a sharp downward projection of bone which gives attachment to muscles. That's the styloid process. Then the fossa. This is a depression or arrow, and the foramen. So the foramen is just a hole or opening in any structure of the body. That's why we call it a foramen. Okay. Then the bone sinus. The bone sinus is just a oral cavity within a bone. That's the oral cavity within a bone. We call it a bony sinus. Then meatus with reference to the skeletal system. So meatus with reference to the skeletal system, just a tube-shaped cavity within a bone. That's a meatus. Okay, then other terms we have the articulation, which is just a joint between two or more bones. Then suture, which is just the name given to the immovable joint. Then articulating surface, this is now just a part of the bone which enters into the formation of a joint. So the part that is connecting, that is entering the joint. So the part of that bone, that's the articulating surface. Then facet is the small, generally rather flat articulating surface. We call it a facet. Then the condyle, this is just a smooth, rounded projection found at the end of a bone, which is part of a joint. So we call it a condyle. So these are some of the terms we'll be using. So, and the other terms, so the terms osteogenesis and ossification are often used synonymously to indicate the process of bone formation. So when you say ossification, we're talking about osteogenesis, which is bone formation. Okay. So let's now dive in with the development and growth and structure of the bone, structure of bones. Okay, so how do the bones develop and grow? So parts of the skeleton are formed during the first few weeks after conception. Then by the end of the 80th week after conception, the skeletal pattern is formed in cartilage and connective tissue membranes, and then ossification is going to begin. So remember, we are saying ossification and osteogenesis are used synonymously. Then bone development continues throughout adulthood. Even after adult stature is attained, bone development continues with the repair of fractures and remodeling to meet challenging lifestyles. Then there are three types of cells. involved in the development, growth, and remodeling of bones. So these are osteoblasts, which are bone forming cells. We have osteocytes, which are mature bone cells. Then you have osteoclasts, which break down and reabsorb bone. Those are osteoclasts. So three types of cells involved in the development of and growth and remodeling of bones: osteoblasts, osteocytes, osteoclasts. Okay, so this is an osteogenic cell which develop into an osteoblast, okay, which forms one matrix bone. Then this is an osteocyte which maintain bone tissue. Then this is an osteoclast which functions in the resorption, then the breakdown of the bony tissue. Then it has ruffled borders. Okay, that's the tissues. Then bone ossification, remember ossification, we are using it interchangeably with osteogenesis. So there are two types of bone osteogenesis or bone ossification. So we have the intramembranous ossification and we have the endochondral ossification. So starting with intramembranous ossification or intramembranous osteogenesis, which involves the replacement of a sheet-like connective tissue membranes within bone tissue. So that's what they are calling it, intramembranous, so meaning the osteogenesis is going to, or the replacement of the connective tissue within the membranes, in the connective tissue membranes within the bony tissue, so intramembranous osteogenesis. So the bones formed in this manner are called intramembranous bones. Then they include certain flat bones of the skull and some of the irregular bones. Then the bones are first formed as connective tissue membranes. Then osteoblasts migrate to the membranes and deposit bone matrix around them. When the osteoblasts are surrounded by matrix, they are called osteocytes. Okay, so they now become bone forming cells. Okay, so this is just a process of intermembranous ossification. For example, the mandible or flat bone of the skull, where the development of the ossification in the center, where the osteoclasts have been surrounded by the collagen fibers. Okay, and the mesenchymal cells outside, then the blood capillaries outside. Okay, then after that, then the calcification is going to begin. So the osteocyte will be in the lacuna and the cannuculus. Then the osteoblast will surround the osteocytes. Then there will be a newly formed, a newly calcified bony matrix. The information of the tubercular, then the osteoblast will still be surrounding the insides, but inside now is going to change into a spongy bone trabeculae. Then the mesenchymal condenses outside. Then there will be development of the periosteum. So the outer layer is going to become the periosteum. Then inside there will be a spongy bone tissue. Then outside the spongy bone tissue, there's going to be a compact bone. This is more of the intramembranous ossification, how it occurs. Okay, so let's now go to the endochondral ossification. Okay, so the endochondral ossification or endochondral osteogenesis first begins by replacement of hyaline cartilage. So the endochondral ossification involves replacing hyaline cartilage with bone tissue to form most of the skeleton's bones. The information of bone models. Bones are first formed as hyaline cartilage models, which are later replaced with bone tissue. Then primary ossification center, where the osteoblasts form a collar of compact bone around the diaphysis, creating a primary ossification center and replacing disintegrating cartilage with spongy bone. Then ossification continues outward, so there will be ossification which is going to spread from the primary center to the end of the bones, forming the diaphysis and the epiphysis. Then there will be secondary ossification centers which occurs after birth, where the secondary ossification centers form the epiphysis, then replacing cartilage with bone while retaining spongy bone. Then remaining cartilage areas, so the hyaline cartilage remains in two areas as articular cartilage over the epiphysis and the epiphyseal plate. So the epiphyseal plate will be is actually the growth region, so which is between the epiphysis and the diaphysis. That's about the endochondrial ossification, and this is just a picture demonstrating what we are talking about. Okay, so from the fetal hyaline cartilage models developed, then the cartilage calcifies and a periosteum bone forms around the diaphysis. Then primary ossification centers forms in the diaphysis. Then secondary ossification centers form in the epiphysis. Then the bone replaces cartilage except the articular cartilage. Then epiphyseal plates ossify and form the epiphyseal lines. So this is just a demonstration of what we are talking about in the endochondrial ossification. So this is also the same endochondrial ossification. So development of the cartilage model, growth of the cartilage model, development of the primary ossification center. Okay, then after that there will be development of the medullary or marrow cavity. Okay, once that's developed, there will be development of the secondary ossification center, and finally there will be formation of the articular cartilage and the epiphyseal plate. Okay, then bone growth. So how do the bones grow? Okay, so bone grow in length at the epiphyseal plates by a process that is similar to endochondrial ossification. So meaning they don't grow on the diaphysis, they grow on the end of the bone, which is the epiphyseal plates, where the end of the bone is on the epiphyseal plates. Okay, so here will be where I'm pointing the point. Okay, then the cartilage in the region of the epiphyseal plate next to the epiphysis continues to grow by mitosis, and the chondrocytes in the region next to the diaphysis age and regenerate. Then osteoblasts are going to move in and ossify the matrix to form bone. That's the process of bone formation. Okay, so types of bone tissue. So what are the types of bone tissue? So types of bone tissue, there are basically two types of bone tissue. Namely, we have compact tissue. We also have bony and spongy tissue. And the names imply that the two types of tissue differ in density or how tightly they are packed together. So when you say compact, meaning it is highly packed. Spongy, not so highly packed, and it's not very dense. And an equilibrium between osteoblast and osteoclast are going to maintain the bone tissue. Okay, so let's start with the compact bone tissue. So the compact bone consists of closely packed osteons or avasian system. Then the osteon consists of a central canal called the osteonic or the avasian canal, which is surrounded by the concentric rings, which is the lamellae of the matrix. Then between the rings of matrix, the bone cells, the osteocytes, are located in spaces called the lacunae. Okay, then small channels, which are called the canaliculi, radiate from the lacuna to the osteogenic canal, which is the avasian canal, to provide passageways through the hard matrix. That's about the compact bone. Then the spongy, which is the cancellous bone, is lighter and less dense than compact bone. Then the sponge bone consists of plates, which are the trabeculi, and bars of bone adjacent to small irregular cavities that contain red bone marrow. Then the canaliculi connect to the adjacent cavities instead of a central avasian canal to receive their blood supply. Then it may appear that the trabecula are arranged in a haphazard manner, but they are organized to provide maximum strength, similar to braces that are used to support a building. So that's how they are also organized. Then the trabeculae of a spongy bone follow the lines of stress and can realign if the direction of stress changes. That's about the spongy. That's about the spongy bones. Okay, so this is just demonstrating the osteons or the aversion system in compact bone and trabecula in the spongy bone. So this is the osteon. Okay, that's an example of the osteons. Then this is the spongy bone over here. That's the trabecula here. Okay, then the lacuna, that's the lacuna here. Then the canaliculus will be here. Okay, so that's about the about this. What this is projecting. Okay, then this is what we are talking about. So the highly dense part is the compact bone, then the less dense and less compacted is the spongy bone. Then that's here is this, you can also see from here. Then the compact bone is also here, then this is the osteon. Then within the compact within the sponge bone, as you can see, there is what we are calling, so just below it is what we are calling within the diaphysis or within the shaft is what we are calling the yellow bone marrow. Then on the articulating cartilages, near the articulating cartilages, we have the red bone marrow. Okay, then outside, that's where the periosteum is. So this is about the sponge bone and the compact bone as we are talking about. Okay, they now do classify bones, so classification of bones. So the bones are classified according to shape into long, short, flat, irregular, and sesamoid bones, and can also be classified according to their developmental history into endochondral and membranous bones. Then the four principal types of bones that we have are long bones, short bones, flat bones, irregular bones. So let us now examine each in turn, starting with the long bones. So starting with the long bones, the long bones include the clavicle, humerus, radius, ulna, femur, tibia, fibula, metacarpals, and phalanges. Then this developed by replacement of hyaline cartilage plate, which is an endochondral ossification, except for the clavicle, it doesn't necessarily replace the hyaline cartilage. Then they have a shaft, which is known as the diaphysis, and the two ends are known as the epiphysis. Then the metaphysis is a part of the diaphysis adjacent to the epiphysis or the epiphysis. Okay, so this is what we are talking about of the diagram of the long bone is, because this is a very good question. It comes asking you to draw a long bone. So you need to know how to draw it. So of course, in the middle you have the diaphysis. Then adjacent to it you have the metaphysis and the metaphysis. So adjacent to the diaphysis we have the metaphysis and the metaphysis. Then above it we have the distal epiphysis. So okay, then here also have the proximal epiphysis. Then at least within the bone you have to indicate this is the compact bone, this is the spongy bone, this is the articulating cartilage. Okay, then that's also the articulating cartilage this side as well. So this is at least something you have to know how to draw this the long bone. Okay, then let's go to the short bones. So the short bones are approximately cuboid shaped. Then they include the carpal and the tarsal bones. Then are composed of the sponge bone and marrow, surrounded by a thin outer layer of compact bone. Then the flat bones consist of two layers of compact bone enclosing the spongy bone and the marrow space of the diploid. Then they include the ribs, sternum, scapula, and bones in the vault of the skull. Okay, let's continue. Then the irregular bones contains most of the sponge bone developed by a thin outer layer of compact bone. Then they include bones of mixed shapes, such as bones of the trabeculae, Then the sesamoid bones develop in certain tendons and reduce friction on the tendons, thus preventing it from excessive wear. Then are commonly found where tendons cross the ends of the long bones in the limbs, as in the wrists and in the knee. So in the knee example would be the patella. Okay, so this is just another picture showing you now the bones. So this is the long bone example will be the humerus. So even the femur is also part of the long bones. Remember, this is also a long bone. Even the tibia and the fibula are also long bones. Okay, even down and the radius as well. Then the short bones, we have the trapezoid. If you get one of the couple bones, that is a short bone. Then the flat bones, example would be the sternum. That's an example of the flat bones. Then the irregular bones, the vertebra is a very good example of the irregular bone, and this is how bones are classified according to how their shape is. Okay, then functions of bones. What are the functions of bones? So bones have a variety of functions, and they are as follows. They provide the framework of the body. They give attachment to muscles and tendons. Then they permit movement of the body as a whole and of parts of the body by forming joints that are moved by muscles. Then they form the boundaries of the cranial, thoracic, and pelvic cavities, protecting the organs contained within. Then they contain red bone marrow, in which blood cells develop in a process known as hematopoiesis. So they contain the bone marrow, in short, where blood cells, production of blood cells occur. Okay, then they also provide a reservoir of minerals, especially calcium phosphate. Okay, so that's about bones. And remember, calcium phosphate also is an important aspect, an important mineral in making the bones stronger. Okay, so that's all for today, and thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and the bell notification. And also tell other videos as well on the channel, especially on the anatomy and physiology playlists. And thank you once again. See you on the next tutorial.